Hi there. This week in Acts, we were looking at chapter 4, verses 1 through 14. And the scene is that Peter and John have healed the lame man near the temple entrance. And word has gotten out that this healing has taken place. And so there's generated a lot of discussion among the people. And obviously the religious leaders are not real happy with what's going on. And the fact that John and Peter are declaring that this was a miracle that was done not on their own power, but in the name of the power of Jesus Christ, the Nazarene. I love in verse 4 where it says, okay, so this is after Peter and John have declared the power that was demonstrated through the healing of this man. And then in verse 4 of chapter 4, it says, but many of those who had heard the message. What message? The message that Jesus Christ is the Messiah and had the power to heal this man who was born lame. So this miracle cannot be debated. People knew that this man had been born with a disability and that now he's running around and hanging out with Peter and John. So how does that happen? Well, that, my friend, is power. So after they heard the message, they believed. And then specifically, it says in the passage, and the number that came to believe, the men, this is just the men, was about 5,000. That does not include women and it does not include children. But you know that in a crowd that size, that there were women and children present as well. It goes on to kind of demonstrate how the religious leaders basically tried to put Peter and John basically on a trial. It was not official, but they kind of surrounded them and they were asking them questions. And so Peter defends what happened and explains that it was by the power of Jesus Christ the Nazarene. And so as you read through the rest of these verses, he points again to Jesus Christ. And he says in verse 10, let it be known to all of you and to all the people of Israel that by the name of Jesus Christ the Nazarene, whom you crucified, whom God raised from the dead, by this name, this man stands here before you in good health. In other words, take note, this man has been healed, and it is by the power of Jesus Christ. In verse 12, it says, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. Now that sounds familiar because it reminds us in John 14:6, Jesus himself said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. And then it says that this crowd that has surrounded them, these religious leaders, it says, now as they observed the confidence of Peter and John and understood that they were uneducated and untrained men, they were marveling and began to recognize them as having been with Jesus. What does it mean that they were uneducated and untrained? Well, remember back in the book of Matthew, it states what Peter and John's livelihood was. They were fishermen. They were not trained with a lot of scholarly education or a lot of schooling. They were fishermen. So that's what that's referencing there. And let's just close with this. In verse 14, it says, and seeing the man who had been healed, because they couldn't deny it, because facts are facts, standing with them, they had nothing to say in reply. So what can we get out of this passage? Well, first of all, we can see the value of obedience, because Peter and John did what God wanted them to do. They didn't run from this crowd. They didn't say, oh no, I don't know how that happened. No, they boldly took a stand. They did what God commanded, and they gave the credit to Jesus Christ. So what can we learn from that? We as Christians today, we need to demonstrate that boldness. We don't need to be afraid of the crowd. We need to give glory where glory is due. Secondly, what else can we see? Look at the message. Look at the message in verse 12. And there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven that has been given among men by which we must be saved. John 3:16 says, For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him will not perish, but will have everlasting life. Okay, that's a message that needs to be heard, and that's a message that we need to be willing to share. Have a great day.